Good morning, everybody, and thanks for following along. Here's the next video in the video series. I've been promising I'm going to get the engine in the car, and I finally did. So today we're going to cover sort of the engine fitment, the LT4 fitment in the SLC chassis. Now, as you may know, the standard engine recommended for this kit is an LS3 and an LS7. And if I was going to use one of those engines, I probably would wait till later in the build because you know everything's going to fit. But in my case, there's some custom work that needs to be done, custom fitment. So I want to get all the harder custom work out of the way. Hopefully I'll get it all done by the fall, and then in the winter I'll put, you know, the sort of the standard stuff on the chassis that's a little more straightforward, like the suspension, the radiator, the cooling tubes, and so forth. But anyway, let's see, a couple things to point out. So this is the LT4 sitting in the back of the chassis. I mean, it looks great. It's just going to be a cool ride once I get done with it. You know, as I've talked about, here's the front engine mount. We'll take a peek down here. So the engine mount really came out great. I'm very happy with it. The engine itself is about a ½ inch above the frame rail, so it would pass New Jersey inspection. I'll probably lower it just a tad, maybe a ½ inch. And let's see. Instead of using the stock rear engine mounts, I fabbed up this wood mount just to rest the back of the engine on, because I actually have this engine shifted back in the chassis just a bit so I can get the front accessories in the car, and more than likely I'll fab up custom rear engine mounts. It's not too difficult to do. Okay, a couple things to point out. So the whole reason of getting this engine in the car this early in the build is to make sure I can build out these front accessories, and there's a couple points of concern. So this is the alternator bracket, and you can see the frame is pretty close to it. And a matter of fact, the alternator just won't bolt in there. It'll foul the frame. And one way to solve this problem is to cut a notch in that frame. But I stared at about 1 billion pictures of different LT4 and LS3 accessory brackets and configurations, and I figured out that if you swap the alternator and the compressor, that the compressor, because it's narrower, will clear the frame. So I'm going to shift over here, and I've got the alternator in the bracket. I won't show you the alternator in the car, it just doesn't fit. But you can see the compressor is a little narrower. Just going to pick this up. This is a Sandin compressor, and I'm just going to sort of hold this where it needs to be. But you can see there's plenty of room. So I'm going to fab up a bracket. One company makes a similar bracket that may work. So I'm going to contact them and see if they would. It's part of a bigger accessory kit, but maybe they'll sell just the bracket to swap the alternator. Excuse me. And the next thing I need to do is fab up a custom intake. So this is the throttle body intake. I've removed the throttle body because that sort of you know, meets right up to this rear frame brace. And a lot of people that build supercharged SLCs will cut a big V in the frame and then weld in some additional support. I would prefer to just leave the frame intact. So in this area, I'm going to fab up an elbow, and that elbow will connect to the throttle body, and then the throttle body will connect to, you know, the intake tube and air filter. And that air filter is actually going to go down, all the way down in this area on that side of the car, and then we'll have the filter towards the bottom, so it'll take in fresh air. Okay, so let's see, just to recap the engines in the car, it looks great. I'm going to fab up a bracket for the alternator, then I have to fab up a bracket for the compressor, and also fab up an intake, an intake elbow, throttle body intake elbow. So those are the next things I'll be covering in the video series and the blog. And we're making progress, slow but sure. Okay, thanks for watching. Take care. Bye.